Welcome to our Cybertalks interview series. I'm Wyatt Cash on behalf of CyberScoop, and I'm here with Christopher Scott, Director of Security Innovation and Remediation for IBM. Chris, thanks for joining us and welcome.
Thank you.
So, as you know, there's been a lot thrown at Chief Information Security Officers in 2020. How has 2020 changed sort of the priorities and trajectory of the CISO's role?
It's interesting. I think we're seeing both technical and personal aspects of those changes. First, from the technical side, it's how do we protect companies, the remote workers, the endpoints in different places. It's really imperative there that the CISO and the CIO are really collaborating well and their teams are functioning well as those changes are really coming quickly. And how do we move to cloud and cloud protections and workloads? And what do we do from an office perspective? How do we secure internal and external aspects of the world? Second, you've got to think about the personal side, like the personnel, the teams. We're much more remote now, and we don't get the water cooler conversations. And you have to think about, how do I pull the different members of my team into video chats? And what is it the way that we get our teams to collaborate and coordinate and just enjoy their work? We find that, members of the team sometimes will be working extra hours because the computer is just down the hall. And so they walk down the hall and they get on the computer and they work. And that's okay for a short period of time, or when you're working through some form of an alert that you're trying to figure out. But that long-term burnout is a concern that we would see from a personnel standpoint as well.
Well, and as you know, workforces are now so much more distributed than they were just a few months ago. What concepts do you believe are helping with that shift? Things like zero trust or multi-factor authentication or even micro-segmentation?
Micro-segmentation is an interesting concept when it comes to that. I actually think that with the world becoming more remote and moving out of the office, we've almost created a physical micro-segmentation of our endpoints because they're not all sitting within the same network. Now, that changes the threat landscape. It changes the risks that we have to consider. So how do we now manage that from the cloud? And do we apply zero trust to our cloud-based applications, right? Do we move to some kind of hardware token or other multi-factor authentication? How do we distribute software? Were we previously using internal software distribution? And do we now have the cloud capability? And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's the CIO and CISO, it's really much more important now that they're collaborating on these processes because it's all moving with this change. And if we can get that collaboration done well, we get both an operational impact for the betterment and then also a security improvement as well.
Well, next I'd like to ask about emerging technologies. IoT and 5G technologies, for example, continue to come online in the US, and that obviously means more tech being brought in-house to handle all that. But as you know, with those kinds of additional technologies comes a new level of supply chain concern. So how should enterprises collectively handle those concerns while at the same time, making sure that we as a nation don't fall behind?
Yeah, and 5G and IoT, you think about that, that's this increasing capabilities of technology and speed and availability, but it's increased risk. And I think the most important thing is technology will continue to adjust and change. And our teams have to take the risk analysis in. How do we discuss risk and find the right tooling for that? But in the end, when you think of IoT and 5G, it's still an endpoint. And we're having more compute capabilities on endpoints and more processes on endpoints. So I really like to focus on what are those risks? How do we segment them off? Do we rethink a way that we have administrative rights? As a perfect example, we still have environments where, in the world that a single account is an admin to every machine. Well, let's re-architect and rethink about that because the risks are increasing as we're connecting more and more things to the global network.
Well, and lastly, as cyber threats continue to grow in sophistication and organizations face a persistent challenge in recruiting skilled cybersecurity professionals, how do we as a nation and enterprises in particular close the gaps that exist in the nation's cybersecurity workforce and in particular the cybersecurity education and training landscape?
So I love this question about education and training. And we always talk about there's this lack of trained cybersecurity professionals. I am a big proponent of looking for these diverse thinkers. How do we look for people that are problem solvers, that really know how to troubleshoot, because we can teach you tech. Even what you learn in college, what you learn through different certification programs, that is teaching you a technical skill. That technology will continue to change, but that core knowledge of how do we troubleshoot, how do we work through a problem, how do we collaborate, those are core to what I think. And I've got many people that I know who have degrees in disciplines outside of cybersecurity and information technology who are amazing at the security job because of the way they think. And I think that's really what we have to focus on. Find those diverse thinkers and then empower them and teach them about the tech that we're working with. And the team collaborating together will be very powerful.
Terrific. Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining us here at CyberTalks and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you for your time.